Listen, come closer, let me tell you a story about three girls who thought luxury lifestyle is all that matters, girls who thought having the latest iPhone and putting on the latest wig is an achievement. They never knew that they would live to regret it. Before we dive down to this story, Kindle hit the subscribe button now. Because this story teaches a great lesson you will wish to learn from. St. Anthony University was not just a place to learn. It was a stage where everyone performed. Every morning, students walked through the iron gates like models on a runway. The girls wore Brazilian wigs that bounced with every step. Their nails were long and painted in bright colors. Their bags were designer, their shoes sparkled, and their phones were always the latest model. The boys wore sneakers that cost more than some people's rent. They drove fancy cars and sprayed expensive perfume that filled the air. If you looked poor, you were invisible. If you looked rich, you were a king or queen. That was the rule of St. Anthony University. In the cafeteria, students sat in groups. The rich ones sat near the windows where sunlight made their jewelry shine. They laughed loudly and took pictures for Instagram. The poor ones sat in the corners, eating cheap food and pretending not to care. But they cared. Everyone cared. Because in this place, respect was not earned by kindness or hard work. It was bought with money and worn like a crown. Lecturers even treated the flashy students better. They smiled at them, called them by name, and sometimes gave them better grades just because they looked important. It was unfair, but it was real. Every week, a new girl would arrive on campus looking ordinary. Maybe she wore simple jeans and a plain shirt. Maybe her hair was natural, not a wig. The other students would look at her and whisper, "She's local," they would say. "She doesn't belong here." And slowly, that girl would start to change. She would watch the campus baddies walk by, and something inside her would break. She would want what they had. She would want to be seen, admired, loved. So she would find a way. Everyone did. Because at St. Anthony University, looking poor was worse than being poor. The campus had its own unspoken hierarchy. At the top were the children of politicians and businessmen who drove to class in their parents' expensive cars. Just below them were the self-made students, those who nobody knew how they got their money, but everyone pretended not to notice. Then came the struggling middle class, students who stretched every dollar to look half decent. And at the very bottom were the truly poor, the ones who ate once a day and wore the same clothes all week. These students moved like shadows, always trying to blend into walls, hoping nobody would notice them long enough to mock them. But someone always noticed. Someone always laughed. And that laughter cut deeper than any knife. But no one talked about the cost. No one asked where the money came from. No one wanted to know. As long as you looked good, you were accepted. And if you didn't, you were nothing. That was the world Emily, Sophia, and Phoebe were born into. And that was the word that would destroy them. Emily stood in front of the mirror in her small hostel room. She wore the same faded jeans she had worn all week. Her t-shirt had a tiny hole near the shoulder. Her slippers were old and worn out. She looked at herself and felt her chest tighten. Tomorrow was Monday, and she would walk through campus again. She would see the same girls in their expensive clothes. She would hear the same whispers. "Is that what she's wearing again?" She wiped her eyes quickly. She refused to cry. Not today. But the tears came anyway, hot and angry, streaming down her cheeks. She covered her mouth to muffle the sobs. Her roommate was in the next bed, pretending to sleep, but Emily knew she was awake. Everyone had everything in these thin-walled rooms. That made the crying even more shameful. Sophia sat on her bed, scrolling through Instagram. Every picture was the same. Girls in beautiful dresses, sitting in expensive restaurants, holding designer bags. The comments were full of praise. "Queen. Stunning. Goals." Sophia looked at her own phone. It was old and cracked. Her photos were simple selfies in her hostel. She had only 50 followers. Most of them were family. She closed the app and stared at the ceiling. "Why can't that be me?" she whispered. Her roommate didn't answer. She was asleep, or pretending to be. Sophia's mother called her every Sunday. How is school, my daughter? Are you eating well? Sophia always lied. Yes, Mama. Everything is fine. But nothing was fine. Her mother sold vegetables in the market to pay her school fees. Sophia wore second-hand clothes while other girls wore designer labels. The guilt mixed with the shame, creating a heavy weight in her chest that never went away. Phoebe walked across campus one afternoon, carrying her books. A group of boys stood near the library, laughing and talking. As she passed, one of them looked at her and smirked. Village girl, he called out. His friends laughed. Phoebe kept walking, her face burning with shame. She didn't turn around. She didn't respond. But inside, something broke. She had always been quiet, always tried to be good. She studied hard, got good grades, and respected everyone. But goodness didn't get you respect here. It got you mocked. That night, she lay in bed and made a decision. She was done being nobody. She was done being the girl people laughed at. She was done being invisible. Her hands clenched into fists under the thin blanket. I will show them, she whispered into the darkness. I will make them regret every word. The three of them met the next evening in Emily's room. They had been friends since first year, bonded by struggle and loneliness. They were the girls nobody wanted to sit with in class. The girls nobody invited to parties. The girls who ate alone and studied together because they had no one else. Emily spoke first, her voice shaking with emotion. We can't keep living like this. I'm tired of being invisible. I'm tired of people looking down on us like we're trash. My parents are working so hard to keep me here, and for what? To be humiliated every single day. Sophia nodded, tears filling her eyes. I want people to see me and wish they were me. I want to post pictures and get thousands of likes. I want to walk into a room and have everyone turn to look. I want to matter. Just once, I want to matter. Phoebe was silent for a moment, staring at her hands. Then she looked up at her friends, her eyes hard and determined. Then let's do it. Let's become who they think is important. Let's become the campus baddies. Emily swallowed hard. But how? We don't have money. Phoebe's jaw tightened. There are ways. We've seen other girls do it. We just have to be willing to pay the price. Sophia's voice was barely a whisper. What if we regret it? The room went silent. Outside, students laughed and played music. Life went on, careless and cruel. Emily took a deep breath. I already regret every day I've lived like this. I can't regret anything more than I regret being poor. And just like that, their old lives ended. A new, dangerous life was about to begin. 3 months later, everything changed. Emily walked through the campus gates on a Monday morning, and people stopped to stare. She wore a tight red dress that hugged her body perfectly. Her wig was long, black, and silky, falling down her back like a waterfall. Her nails were freshly done, painted gold. On her arm was a designer bag, and in her hand was the latest iPhone. She didn't look down. She didn't rush. She walked slowly, confidently, like she owned the place. Her heart was pounding inside her chest, but her face showed nothing but calm. Boys turned their heads. Girls whispered. Who is that? Someone asked. That's Emily, another replied, shocked. But she used to look different. Sophia and Phoebe walked beside her, equally transformed. Sophia wore a white jumpsuit and heels so high they clicked loudly on the pavement. Her lips were painted red, and her lashes were long and dramatic. She had practiced walking in those heels for hours the night before, stumbling and cursing, until she could glide smoothly like the girls in music videos. Phoebe had a short, stylish wig and wore ripped jeans with a crop top. Gold chains hung from her neck. She looked confident, almost dangerous. But inside, her stomach twisted with nervousness. The three of them looked like they had stepped out of a music video. Students took out their phones and recorded them. Some took pictures. By lunchtime, the videos were everywhere. The campus baddies have arrived, someone captioned a post. It got 2,000 likes in an hour. Lecturers noticed too. In class, one of their professors smiled at Emily. "You look lovely today, Miss Emily," he said. She smiled back sweetly. "Thank you, sir." He never used to notice her before. When she raised her hand to answer questions, he used to look past her like she didn't exist. Now, he called her to answer questions and praised her in front of the class. "Excellent answer, Miss Emily. You see, this is the kind of students we need in this university." The other students watched in envy. Some of the girls who used to mock her now looked at her with something close to fear. Boys who used to ignore them now sent messages. "Hey, can we talk? You're beautiful, can I take you out?" The girls didn't respond to all of them. Only the ones with money. Only the ones who could help them stay on top. Every day became a performance. They woke up 2 hours early to do their makeup and choose their outfits. Emily kept a calendar of what they wore each day so they never repeated too soon. They posted pictures on Instagram and TikTok. Their followers grew from hundreds to thousands. Comments flooded in. "Queens. Where did you buy that outfit? You girls are living the dream." People started recognizing them off campus. A girl approached Sophia in a store downtown. "Oh my God, you're one of the campus baddies. Can I take a picture with you?" Sophia felt something she had never felt before: power. She smiled graciously and posed for the photo. The girl thanked her like she was meeting a celebrity. But no one asked the real question. No one said, "How are you affording this?" Because asking that question would break the magic. And everyone wanted to believe the magic was real. Girls wanted to believe that they too could transform overnight. Boys wanted to believe that these beautiful girls were available. Even Emily, Sophia, and Phoebe started to believe it. They started to forget the nights they cried in their rooms. They started to forget who they used to be. They started to think this life would last forever. But deep down, in the quiet moments before sleep, they each felt it, a creeping fear that someday, somehow, the magic would break. During the day, they were untouchable. They sat in the front row of every class, their designer bags resting on the desks. They walked through campus like celebrities, stopping to take pictures with fans. Yes, fans. Other students looked up to them now. Girls asked for fashion advice. "Where did you buy your wig? Can you recommend a good makeup artist?" The campus baddies gave their answers with kind smiles, enjoying every moment of their newfound fame. Boys competed for their attention, sending gifts and love letters. One boy even wrote Phoebe a poem and read it aloud in the cafeteria. Everyone clapped. Phoebe smiled and thanked him, but later she and her friends laughed about it in private. "These boys are so desperate," Emily said. But secretly, she loved it. They all did. They were invited to parties every weekend. Not the small hostel parties they used to hear about from outside locked doors, real parties with DJs, lights, and free drinks. They would arrive fashionably late, and the crowd would part for them like they were royalty. "The campus baddies are here," someone would shout, and everyone would cheer. They danced, took pictures, and acted like they didn't have a care in the world. They were the standard, the goal, the dream. But when the sun went down, their real life began. Every Friday and Saturday night, a black car would pick them up from a street corner far from campus. They never told anyone about this. They would slip away quietly, making excuses. "I'm visiting my aunt. I have a family thing." Inside the car, they would change clothes. They would put on even shorter dresses, higher heels, brighter makeup. The driver never spoke. He just drove them to expensive clubs in the city. Inside, the music was loud, the lights were flashing, and wealthy men sat in VIP sections drinking champagne. These men were older, sometimes twice their age. They wore expensive watches and suits. They smelled like money. The girls would smile, laugh, and dance. They would take pictures with these men, clinking glasses and posing for the camera. Later, they would post the pictures online, but they cropped out the men's faces. Only the luxury was shown. Only the champagne bottles, the fancy tables, the designer shoes. "Living my best life," Sophia would caption a photo. The likes would pour in by the hundreds. But what the pictures didn't show was the way these men looked at them. The way their hands lingered too long on their waist. The way they whispered things that made the girl's skin crawl. The men paid for everything. Dinner, drinks, new clothes, new phones. Some of them gave the girls money directly. Thick envelopes of cash. Buy yourself something nice, they would say with a smile. Emily, Sophia, and Phoebe took the money without shame. At first, they told themselves it was just business. "We are not doing anything wrong," Sophia said one night in the car ride home. "We are just having fun and getting paid for it." Phoebe stared out the window at the city lights blurring past. "Yeah," she whispered. But her voice didn't sound convinced. Her hands were shaking, and she clasped them together tightly so the others wouldn't notice. Emily kept a notebook where she wrote down all their expenses. New wigs cost $200. Designer bags cost $500. Makeup, nails, data for posting online, new shoes, new dresses, it all added up. The money from the men barely lasted 2 weeks. So they went back. Again and again. They told themselves it was temporary. "Just until we graduate," Emily said. "Then we'll get real jobs and leave all this behind." But deep down, they knew they were trapped. They couldn't go back to being poor. They couldn't face the shame of losing their status. The thought of walking through campus in cheap clothes again, of hearing the whispers and laughter, was more terrifying than anything these men could do to them. So they kept going. And every night, the secret grew heavier. One evening, Phoebe sat alone in her room. She had just returned from another club night. Her feet hurt from the heels. Her face was still covered in makeup, but she was too tired to wash it off. She opened Instagram and saw the pictures she had posted earlier. 5,000 likes. Hundreds of comments. "You're glowing, queen. I want your life." Goals. She scrolled through them, but instead of feeling happy, she felt empty. Hollow. Like she was reading comments about someone else. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the girl staring back. Heavy makeup. Fake lashes. A wig that wasn't her real hair. "Who am I?" she whispered. No answer came. She pulled off the wig and stared at her natural hair underneath, short and neglected. She touched it gently and started to cry. Sophia started having nightmares. In her dreams, she was back in her old clothes, standing in the middle of campus while everyone pointed and laughed. The laughter grew louder and louder until it became a roar. She would try to run, but her feet wouldn't move. She would try to scream, but no sound would come out. She would wake up sweating, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. One morning, her roommate asked, "Are you okay? You've been talking in your sleep. You keep saying 'I'm sorry' over and over." Sophia forced a smile. "I'm fine. Just stressed about exams." But exams were not the problem. The problem was the lie. The exhausting, endless lie that was eating her alive from the inside. Emily became obsessed with staying on top. She checked her phone every 5 minutes, counting likes and followers. If a post didn't get enough attention, she would delete it and post something better. She started comparing herself to other girls online. "Look at her bag, it's prettier than mine," she would say, her voice tight with anxiety. "Look at her dress. Where did she get that? We need to do better." Sophia would roll her eyes. "Emily, you're doing too much. We are already popular." But Emily couldn't stop. She was terrified of losing everything. She was terrified of becoming nobody again. She would spend hours planning their outfits, their posts, their appearances. She barely slept. Dark circles formed under her eyes, which she covered with more and more makeup. One Saturday night, a man at the club grabbed Phoebe's wrist too tightly. "Come sit with me," he said, pulling her toward his table. She tried to pull away, but his grip was strong. Painful. "Let go," she said firmly, her voice shaking. He laughed, his breath smelling like alcohol. "Don't act shy. I paid for your drinks, didn't I? I bought you that phone you're holding. You owe me." Phoebe felt ice run through her veins. Emily stepped in and pushed his hand away. She said, "Let go." The man's smile faded. He stood up, towering over them. His eyes were cold and mean. You girls think you're too good now. You think you can just take my money and walk away. Security came before things got worse, 2 large men who escorted the drunk man out. But the damage was done. In the car ride home, no one spoke. Phoebe sat by the window, rubbing her wrist where red marks were forming. Sophia stared at her hands, trembling. Emily looked straight ahead, her jaw clenched. They all felt it. This wasn't fun anymore. It wasn't glamorous. It was dangerous. They were playing with fire, and sooner or later, they were going to get burned. When they got back to campus at 3 in the morning, they went to their separate rooms without saying goodnight. Each of them lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how much longer they could keep this up. Wondering if it was already too late to stop. It started with one screenshot. A girl named Clara, who had always been jealous of the campus baddies, was scrolling through social media one night. She couldn't sleep, bitter and angry at the world. She used to be friends with Emily in first year, before the transformation. Back then, they were both nobodies. But Emily had left her behind, had risen to fame while Clara remained invisible. Now Clara spent her night stalking the campus baddies online, consumed by envy. That night, she was scrolling through a businessman's Instagram page when she saw it. In the background of his photo, partially hidden by champagne bottles, she recognized 3 faces. Emily, Sophia, and Phoebe. They were sitting at the table with him, smiling and holding glasses. Clara's heart raced. Her hands shook as she took a screenshot. She stared at it for a long moment, her finger hovering over the share button. Part of her hesitated. But the jealousy was too strong. She sent it to her group chat. Isn't this them? Within minutes, the screenshot spread like wildfire. By Monday morning, the whole campus had seen it. Students whispered in the hallways. Did you see the picture? I knew something was off about them. They are not as classy as they pretend. I heard they've been doing this for months. My cousin saw them at a club downtown with old men. The rumors grew with each telling, becoming more and more exaggerated. The campus baddies walked through the gates, unaware. Emily was actually smiling, excited about a new dress she was wearing. But when they entered the cafeteria, the room went silent. Everyone stared. Some people smirked. Others looked away, embarrassed for them. A few pointed openly. Emily's stomach dropped. Something's wrong, she whispered. Sophia pulled out her phone. Her hands shook as she opened Instagram. The screenshot was everywhere. Someone had made it into a meme. Another person had created a whole thread connecting their pictures to different rich men. The comments were brutal. So this is where the money comes from. Fake life, fake girls. They are not queens, they are just clowns. I always knew they were prostitutes. Pretending to be rich when they are just sleeping around. Disgusting. Shame on them. Phoebe felt tears burning her eyes, but she refused to cry in public. She bit her lip so hard she tasted blood. They sat down at their usual table, the one they had claimed months ago, the one that was always surrounded by admirers. But today, no one joined them. Girls who used to beg for pictures now walked past without looking, their noses in the air. Boys who used to flirt now laughed and pointed, making crude jokes. Hey, campus baddies. How much for one night? Someone shouted from across the cafeteria. Laughter erupted. Emily clenched her fist. Who did this? She hissed, her voice shaking with rage and humiliation. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. Sophia couldn't eat. She just stared at her phone as more and more posts appeared. Someone had created a Twitter thread with pictures of them at different clubs, connected like evidence in a crime investigation. Someone else had made a TikTok video with their pictures set to mocking music. It had 50,000 views already. We have to leave, Phoebe whispered. I can't sit here anymore. But Emily shook her head. No. If we run, they win. We have to act like nothing is wrong. But everything was wrong. Their phones wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications. Messages from strangers. You're disgusting. I looked up to you. How could you? Even some of their followers, The people who called them queens just yesterday had turned against them. Lecturers started treating them differently too. The professor who used to smile at Emily now looked at her with cold eyes. In class that afternoon, he called her name. "Miss Emily, can you answer this question?" She stood up, but her mind was blank. She couldn't focus. All she could think about was everyone staring at her, judging her. I don't know, sir." He shook his head slowly, disappointment clear on his face. "Sit down." The class giggled, whispers spreading like poison. Emily sat, her face burning with shame. She wanted to disappear. She wanted the ground to open up and swallow her whole. After class, Sophia broke down in the bathroom. She locked herself in a stall and sobbed, her whole body shaking. "I can't do this anymore," she cried. Phoebe stood outside the store, her own tears falling silently. "We have to stick together," she said, her voice breaking. "We're all we have." But even she didn't believe they would survive this. The weeks that followed were the worst of their lives. Every day felt like walking through fire. Students made cruel jokes. Someone drew pictures on the bathroom walls, crude drawings of the three girls with words written underneath that made them sick. Every morning, Emily would find notes slipped under her door. "Prostitute. Fake. You disgust me." She stopped reading them but couldn't stop them from coming. Someone created a fake Instagram page called Campus Baddies Exposed, posting old screenshots and mocking their every move. The page got 10,000 followers in 3 days. Emily, Sophia, and Phoebe stopped posting online. Their accounts, once full of glamorous pictures, went silent. Their followers started to drop. Hundreds at first, then thousands. Brands that used to send them free products stopped responding to their messages. The soft life they built was crumbling, piece by piece. One afternoon, Emily was walking to class when a group of girls blocked her path. She recognized them. They used to smile and wave at her, used to ask for pictures. Now their faces were twisted with contempt. "Hey, campus baddie," one of them said mockingly. "Where's your designer bag today?" Emily tried to walk past, but they wouldn't move. They formed a wall, forcing her to stop. "What's wrong?" "No rich man to buy you one this week," another girl asked, and the whole group laughed. Emily's hands shook. She wanted to scream, to fight, to defend herself. But she knew it would only make things worse. She pushed past them, shoulder-checking one of the girls hard enough to make her stumble. "Wow, she's aggressive too," one of them called after her. "Guess that's how she gets her clients." More laughter. Emily kept walking, her vision blurred with tears, her heart pounding with rage and humiliation. Sophia stopped going to class altogether. She stayed in her room, curtains closed, scrolling through old pictures on her phone. Pictures of when she was happy. Pictures of when people loved her. Pictures of when she felt like somebody. Now she felt like less than nothing. Her roommate tried to talk to her. "Sophia, you need to eat something. You haven't left this room in 3 days." Sophia didn't respond. She felt like a ghost. Like she had disappeared and no one cared. Like she had died but her body kept breathing. Her mother called one evening. "How are you, my daughter? You sound different. Is something wrong?" Sophia wanted to tell her everything. She wanted to cry and confess and beg for forgiveness. But instead, she forced brightness into her voice. "I'm fine, Mama. Just busy with school." After she hung up, she stared at her mother's contact photo for a long time. Her mother's smiling face, proud and hopeful. "I'm sorry, Mama," Sophia whispered. "I'm so sorry." She hung up and sobbed into her pillow, muffling the sound so her roommate wouldn't hear. Phoebe was the only one still trying to hold on. She attended classes, kept her head down, and ignored the whispers. But it was getting harder. One day in the library, she was studying when 2 boys sat at her table. "Hey, aren't you one of those girls?" one of them asked with a smirk. Phoebe didn't look up. "I'm trying to study." "Oh, she's trying to study now," the other boy said. "That's funny. I didn't think your kind studied. I thought you just worked at night." They laughed. Phoebe's hands clenched around her pen. Leave me alone. How much do you charge? The first boy asked. My friend wants to know. Phoebe stood up so fast her chair fell backward. I said leave me alone. Her voice was loud, angry, desperate. Everyone in the library turned to stare. The boys raised their hands in mock surrender. Whoa, calm down. We are just asking. They walked away laughing. Phoebe gathered her books with shaking hands and left, feeling dozens of eyes on her back. One evening, she received a message from one of the men they used to meet at the clubs. Hey, I heard things got tough for you. People can be so cruel. If you need money, you know where to find me. I'll always take care of you. She stared at the message for a long time. Part of her wanted to say yes. Part of her wanted to go back to the easy money, the fake smiles, the temporary escape from reality. At least with those men, she knew what they wanted. At least they didn't pretend to be better than her. But she remembered the look in that man's eyes when he grabbed her wrist. She remembered the fear, the helplessness, the shame. She remembered feeling like an object, not a person. Her finger hovered over the reply button. It would be so easy. One message and all her problems would go away. New clothes, new phone, enough money to hold her head high again. But at what cost? She thought about her younger sister at home, who looked up to her. She thought about her mother who sold vegetables in the sun to pay her school fees. She thought about the girl she used to be, before all of this started. And she made a choice. She deleted the message and blocked his number. No, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Not again. Never again. 3 months later, St. Anthony University looked the same. Students still wore designer clothes. They still chased luxury and posted pictures online. A new set of campus baddies had emerged, 3 different girls who walked through campus with the same confidence, the same expensive clothes, the same mysterious wealth. Everyone followed them now. Everyone wanted to be them. The cycle continued. Nothing had changed. Except for 3 girls sitting on a bench under a tree, far from the crowd, far from the noise. Emily, Sophia, and Phoebe wore simple clothes now. No wigs. No designer bags. No makeup. They looked like they did before. But they were not the same. Emily spoke first, her voice quiet. I saw Clara today. She didn't even look at me. She just walked past like I was invisible. Sophia nodded slowly. People forget. That's what they do. They destroy you, use you for entertainment, then they move on to the next person. We were just a story to them. Now we are an old story. Phoebe stared at the ground, pulling at a blade of grass. I thought being rich and admired would make me happy. But I was miserable every single day. I lost myself. I became someone I didn't even recognize. Emily reached over and took her hand. We all did. But we are still here. That's something. We survived. One of their old lecturers walked past. He glanced at them, then looked away quickly, as if ashamed. Emily laughed bitterly. He used to call me lovely. Now I'm invisible again. Funny how that works. Sophia sighed, a deep, tired sound. Maybe being invisible is better than being a lie. At least now when I look in the mirror, I see myself. Not some fake version painted on for other people. Phoebe looked up at the sky, watching clouds drift slowly across the blue. I don't want to be invisible. But I don't want to be fake either. I just want to be me. Whoever that is. I'm still figuring it out. A young girl walked past them, a first-year student by the look of her nervous expression. She wore simple clothes and carried old textbooks. 2 other girls walked behind her, whispering and giggling, clearly making fun of her appearance. The first-year girl's face burned with shame, and she walked faster, trying to escape. Emily, Sophia, and Phoebe watched in silence. They saw themselves in her. They saw the beginning of a story they knew too well. Emily stood up. Hey, she called out to the girl. The first year stopped, looking scared. You dropped this, Emily said, picking up a pen that had fallen from the girl's bag. The girl took it, confused. Thanks. Emily smiled. Don't let them get to you. The girls who laugh, they're just miserable themselves. The first-year girl looked surprised. How did you know? Because I used to be one of them, Emily said simply. She walked back to her friends, leaving the girls staring after her. That evening, the three of them sat together in Emily's room. The room that used to be filled with designer bags and expensive makeup now held only simple belongings and textbooks. They talked for hours. They cried. They laughed. They shared memories both painful and sweet. They talked about the future, uncertain but real. And they made a promise. No more shortcuts, Emily said, her voice firm. No more fake life, Sophia added, wiping tears from her eyes. Phoebe smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes for the first time in months. Just real life. Even if it's hard. Even if it's painful. Even if no one applauds us or takes our picture. At least it will be ours. They didn't know if people would ever respect them again. They didn't know if they would ever be admired. The stares and whispers would probably continue for months, maybe years. Some people would never let them forget. But they knew one thing for sure. They were done falling. From now on, they would rise, slowly and truly, on their own terms. Through hard work, through honesty, through becoming women their mothers could be proud of. It wouldn't be glamorous. It wouldn't get them thousands of likes. But it would be real. And somewhere in the distance, another girl walked onto campus, wearing an expensive wig and carrying a designer bag. She smiled for the cameras, her followers cheering her on. Students whispered in admiration. Who is she? She's gorgeous. Goals. The cycle was beginning again for someone else. But Emily, Sophia, and Phoebe didn't watch. They didn't feel jealous or tempted. They had already lived that story. They knew how it would end. They knew that every shortcut had a price, and that price was always higher than you expected. They turned away and walked in the opposite direction, toward the library, toward their studies, toward a future that was uncertain but honest. As they walked, Phoebe said something that made them all stop. Do you think we'll ever forgive ourselves? The question hung in the air. Emily thought about it for a long moment. I don't know. Maybe. Someday. But first, we have to become people worth forgiving. Sophia nodded. Then let's start today. And they did. Step by small step, day by difficult day, they began the long journey back to themselves. Not the selves they had been before, innocent and naive. And not the selves they had created, fake and hollow. But new selves. Wiser. Scarred. Real. And perhaps, eventually, free. If this story touched your heart or opened your eyes, don't just watch and scroll away. Subscribe now, because the next story might be the lesson you or someone you love needs to hear.